prayer. Whew, Lord, help me catch my breath, calm my heart, and then just be with me as we go through the elements of your kingdom that are coming. And this is such a rich, fun study, Lord. I just pray that you get us excited about what is in store for us and the world. In your Son's name, amen. So, highlighting the outline for today. Again, obviously, welcome to everybody. If you're not been with us, Alex.
Way to think on that.
Way to take the fall for this. We're handing out materials before the class, so you will hopefully go through them and then come prepared to discuss them. We're in the middle of essentially our kind of 3 base units. So we did an introduction, which we'll go through here in just a second, and then we've got 3 base units, and then we're going to look at a handful that sort of integrate all these things together. And in those units, it'll be a bit more of a historical progression. So we started off with this, which is to say our main goal is, can we get us all to agree that these are the obvious answers to these 4 questions about the kingdom? And what is the kingdom? Well, it's Jesus on David's throne. And it says that right there in Luke. And of course, you have to ask yourself, is Jesus on David's throne? No, it's not. It's not a hard one, right? And so, by definition, that should change your mental framework as you hear people talk about the kingdom and today being the kingdom, etc., etc. What is the purpose of the kingdom? Well, as it says in Corinthians, Jesus is going to wrap everything up on creation, and everything under creation in heaven is going to be wrapped up underneath the Father at the end. How do I gain entrance to this? If I want to be a part of this sucker, how do I get into it? Matthew answers it. Humility is the key to the kingdom. And then what is my role once I'm in there? And it is a doulos. It's a bondservant. We told you we're going to explore those 4 questions again and again. But our base units are 2, 3, and 4. And so last week, George introduced this idea of the universal kingdom. That, again, there's not a lot of, really not a lot of need to spend time on this. God is the sovereign of the universe and the creator of all, unseen and seen. So he has universal control. But God has decided to work through agents, and those agents are both Elohim and humanity. And so we're introduced to both of those characters at the beginning of the Bible in Genesis. The problem is that they do a very poor job acting as the mediators. And so our focus is then on this idea of the mediatorial kingdom, this idea of a kingdom that is run through agents under the auspices of the universal kingdom. And George set that up for us. So this week we're looking at the elements of the kingdom. And again, the 4 elements of the kingdom, everything about the kingdom falls into these 4 buckets: the realm, the ruler, the right, and the reign. And so as you read through elements of Scripture, they should slot into one of those 4 areas. That's today's. And then next week is the timing elements. Because again, we start off with, and I won't do this until in Unit 4, but I'll do this in Unit 10. We start off with the disciples basically sitting there saying, hey, Jesus is about to go up to heaven. It's now when you restore the kingdom. The Pharisees come up and, when is the kingdom coming? You know, this is on their minds 2,000 years ago. It should certainly be on ours. So we're going to talk about next week the ideas of contingency and by man. And George highlighted that with his Exodus, which of course then leads into contingency by God, which does not sound right in our ears, but George proved it last week. We're going to explore it some more, which then means if there's contingency on both sides, then how can God know something? Foreknowledge versus contingency. So we'll take a look at those things in Unit 4, which we'll hand out here at the end of today's lesson. So, looking at your elements in front of you, we started off with a couple of pages of just scripture references, and then gave some kind of elemental natures to that. So give me some feedback. Which of these verses did you say, for instance, just looking through it, which of these elements refer most to Israel?
Well, there's a lot of them
Okay.
that deal with Israel, and that, he's going to make them his people, and if he's, their God, he's going to be their people. He's
Okay.
going to bring them back.
Okay.
I can't remember if it's in there or not.
Oh, it's in there.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Yeah, but others that like strictly specifically to Israel. Anything?
Like
agricultural
Oh, yeah.
prosperity.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely part of it, right? For them, this is, the Isaiah and Ezekiel are right there from that perspective, but again, Deuteronomy, I think, is the one I was kind of probably thinking about, right? It's an interesting thought. Okay, you'll have reproductive productivity
Right.
in the New Kingdom. Think about in the Old Testament how many times we're confronted with a woman or a couple who are basically what?
Yeah.
Barren. And of course, the immediate perception of that couple is there's something wrong with them. Because if they were right with God, they would have what? Reproductive productivity, right?
And Ezekiel as well, because he will gather them back
Yes, to the land.
from where they're scattered and
Exactly right. And he's gathering them back to where?
The land.
The land. It says specifically, I will gather you from all the lands and bring you into your own land. And again, this is one of those things, Tyler said this in jest, but it's absolutely true and it's worth always reminding yourself of. The you in the Bible is not you. Generally speaking, it's somebody else. Generally speaking, it's Israel. So, which of the verses in here do you think relate most to the church? Chad?
Well, it's just a dumb joke. You said reproductive productivity, and I have a baby crying behind me.
So you're
That's
just
applicable.
You're just smirking back there. Okay. Does anybody see anything in here that's, specifically related to the church?
Well, I mean, Isaiah 22, the very end, now will be in the last days, the house of Yahweh will be established on the mountains, and, so it's to Israel, but yet we're gonna participate in all of these things that he's given us.
How will we participate? Where are we in
Well, no,
Isaiah 2
it's
through-
not, yeah,
It is in there.
is it? Because I had
Which
to read
is-
All the
of it.
nations will stream.
Yeah, all the nations, yeah.
Exactly right, which is going to be Unit 7. So we're going to look at the nations in Unit 7. Most physical or material of these elements and blessings. There's quite a few of these. Are you struck by the fact that the blessings of the kingdom are so physical? Material possessions.
See, and we tend to spiritualize all of it.
Exactly right. And it's really hard to go up and spiritualize. I will call for the grain and multiply it, and I will not bring a famine on you.
Yeah.
I will multiply the fruit of the tree, the produce of the field. Right?
Wasn't that a constant concern for people back in Israel's day?
Absolutely, right? Yeah, because again, why? They didn't have the water moving capabilities of modern Israel, right? To be able to just pump water out into fields and things like this, like that we are doing. So water flow, even in today's Israel, is very suspect, right? Why the Dead Sea is drying up, and they're looking at building a pipeline from it to the Red Sea to refill it, So water supply issues, and if you don't have water, you don't have crops. You don't have crops, you don't feed your people because you can't fly stuff in from Chile in 1400 BC, like we do. So that is absolutely true. Are there other things that are related to material and physical possessions?
Isaiah 65.
Yeah,
In their homes,
Yeah.
they will live in them and plant their crops and eat them. And
exactly right. Exactly right.
All the physical eyes will be opened, ears deaf, lame.
Yes, absolutely, right?
What he's showing us, is literally what we have and what we are doing now is just a foretaste of what is to come. We need to be doing the exact same thing now that we're gonna be doing in the kingdom.
Yeah. But I'm glad, Renee, you picked up on this idea. The eyes of the blind will be open, the ears of the deaf will be unstopped, the lame will leap like deer, the tongue of the mute will shout for joy, right? That's a physical blessing. And while he will use in Isaiah, and Christ himself will use in his parables in Matthew, the idea that people are metaphorically deaf and metaphorically blind, he tells John, the blind see and the deaf hear, the lame leap, etc., etc. Because why? His miracles prove it, right? There's a physical aspect to the kingdom. So now, to your point, what's the most spiritual aspect out of this list? Or the most emotional aspect out of this list?
Well, the Ezekiel 36 talks about, they are healed in their heart. They've given a new heart for God. So these were all things that were promised if they did the right things back at the beginning after Exodus.
Yep.
And they weren't able to. Now they will be able to because God is going to put the law in their heart.
That's exactly
So
right.
that's the big change.
That is certainly the big change, right? Other changes. What about an emotional, not a spiritual, but what about an emotional benefit to the kingdom?
Well, I don't know if you consider this emotional or not, but I mean, to me, their worship and their song and their praise, that's an emotion that is exuded because of who he is. It just comes out.
Yeah, I would agree with that, right? There has that response
Yeah.
that's
yes.
intended as you understand it and realize it. Others?
I think Psalms 98, because it gives us hope of that salvation, that we're not gonna lose it, and he's going to be there, and the whole earth will see his majesty and salvation.
Yeah, so I think that's exactly right. There's this theology that sits there and says that you can lose your salvation if you aren't clinging tightly and obeying God in all ways and forms. What kind of emotional state do you spend your life in then? Fear, right? Worry, anxiety, that is not peace that passes understanding, right? Psalm 98, you can go to Jerusalem and see him there. What are you worried about, right? There's a lot of things, obviously, that. There's one more, I think for myself, when I was thinking through this one, right, from the emotional standpoint, it's things like the geopolitical security. It's this idea on the front where, again, you will grow stuff and nobody else will take it, right? If you live in a world where, justice isn't real, then you build and you wonder what?
Yeah.
Yeah, when are you going to lose it, right? And so we have, again, our work in Africa has brought us in contact with people. Again, tribal components are still true today as they were years ago, and tribe rises up against tribe and you get wiped out. So everything that you and your family, larger context, have built, all destroyed, taken, and you're like, what do I do? Where do I start again, right? To have that kind of security, right? To be the peace that would come at night if you're sitting there unemployed, or if you're sitting there worrying about, the economy or some situation politically. How would you sleep better at night if you don't have those worries on your mind and in your
Well,
heart?
I mean, even now, I remember when my son first got his job, he got his first job at JCPenney's and working in their IT department and stuff. And he would get so frustrated with everything, and I'd just say, just hang in there, stick with them, they'll take care of you, you've got job security, all these things that back in my day, you went to all retirement age and you got your pension and all. That's no longer the case,
Yeah.
and so he finally had to leave after 10 years because it was just so bad. But nowadays, the kids don't do that. They job hop,
All the time.
because the security is not there that
Yeah.
used to be.
Exactly right. And that's the thing, that permeates into our hearts and our minds, and we carry it with us all the time. So of these verses, which one was the most expected? You're like, oh yeah, I'm glad that one's in there. I expected to see that sucker.
The plowshares, or the one about the weapons becoming plowshares.
Yeah. The turning the pruning shears and hooks and all that stuff into things like that, yeah. Anybody else? I think is the one. I think, again, I didn't put down the lion and the lamb, the kid playing with the snake hole, stuff like
Yeah.
this, right? Sorry about that.
Well,
I have
and
a
one in
question.
Isaiah.
I have a question coming up in that one in just a second.
Well, I mean, one in Isaiah where he's gonna establish his throne in loving kindness, we're all looking forward, we know it's gonna be a time that love is gonna be there, and he's gonna sit on on this throne and judge, and
That's
that's
odd.
what we expect, I mean, that's,
Yeah, exactly. If Isaiah 16:5 is your verse on here that you are most expected to see about the kingdom, then check yourself out a gold star out of petty cash, because that's awesome, because that's exactly the point of the kingdom. So what was the most surprising verse then? You're like, what's this in here for?
I don't think of us as having kids in the kingdom, so that one surprised me, like reproductive prosperity.
So the reproductive productivity, I love that combination, right? Is surprising to you because you didn't think there were going to be new kids in the kingdom?
Well, we're talking about like the 1,000-year millennium, like.
Yeah.
Okay, then I guess yes, I would say kids there.
Yeah, exactly.
you're not gonna be married.
Well, but the on earth kingdom is different than the like forever in eternity, right? That's, okay, that's.
Yeah, exactly. So, anybody else? Surprises when you read through this list?
How about that last one about more teaching, more learning?
Yes, I love that.
You think everything was wrapped up, and God is going to be there teaching us more.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, that's kind of fun, isn't it?
yeah.
And as a person who fancies himself a teacher, I'm pretty excited about Isaiah 2:2-3, because I might have something to do in the kingdom.
Do we have a rate my professor?
That's so sad. That's so terrible.
But what's great is that he's gonna be teaching and instructing from his ways, that we might walk in his paths,
Yeah.
not, it'll be so complete, I cannot wait.
What did you guys think about the Jeremiah 31:29-30? Is that do you think of that as a kingdom verse?
Not for the church.
Not for the church, right?
Not for the church.
Yeah. We don't think of that from a church perspective, right? But it's a kingdom verse from Israel's perspective.
Mhm.
Because again, think about the things that happen from one generation spills down to the next, right? And now he's saying, no, it's strict personal accountability. Which for them is a big deal, because that's actually the nut of the problem that they have in the first century. I'm part of Israel. And again, it's easier for us to understand this because in our culture, it starts with the individual, then it goes to a spouse, then it goes to a family, then it goes to larger units. In their culture, it started in the opposite direction. You thought in terms of tribe first, you thought in terms of nation first, and then you worked your way inward. So for them, this would have been something quite surprising, I would have thought. Anything else? How about Psalm 91:11-13? What is this verse famously used in?
The devil misquotes it,
Exactly.
the temptation, correct?
Yeah. So how is this a kingdom verse?
It's a fulfillment of Genesis.
Yeah. We were meant to rule over creation. And creation now bites back. And in the kingdom, we will rule over creation. So it doesn't bite back. And this verse captures that, right? I think that'll be a surprise to us because again, we talk about, well, we live in a world of broken bones and skinned knees. Do we? In the kingdom?
No.
Maybe not. How interesting would that be, right? And you think of that movie Groundhog Day where Bill Murray catches that dude every single afternoon, right? I'll see you tomorrow, maybe, But he, that's our, guardian angel verse right there from that perspective. So what is missing? What verse didn't I put in here that you're like going, you're an idiot?
I wish I'd done the study so I could point that out.
Now she's interested.
I offer these
Give
freebies.
Stacy a week and she gets
You know what? offer these freebies, and I tell you, you get more than a gold star sometimes.
That honesty deserves a gold star.
No, she's done the homework, then she gets gold star. Any verses that are obviously missing? I can think of a couple, but I'm not going to throw them out there. Like I said, I constrained myself to 2 pages. So let me ask you this question. Which one was your favorite? And why? Some of you hasn't spoken yet. When you read through the list, you sat there and said, yep, I'm looking forward to that one. I'll give you for instance. My Uncle Bill, who had rheumatoid arthritis, all his adult life basically from my perspective from 40 on. The verses he loved the most when Jesus just popped in because he didn't have to walk.
Yeah.
Exactly. Uncle Bill couldn't walk, so he liked the idea of teleporting. I'm not sure that's in the kingdom, but is there something about on this list or something in your mind where you're like going, yeah, this is that's gonna be awesome.
No more doctors.
No more doctors, right?
No more insurance.
Exactly, right. It's not the doctors that are the problem, it's the insurance is the problem, right, on both sides, right? Others? Yes, sir?
A missing verse.
A missing verse, okay.
Isaiah 9, 6, and 7.
Okay, which says?
It says, "And a child will be born unto us, a son will be given to us.
Mhm.
And the government shall rest upon his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace.
Yep.
There will be no end to the increase of his government or his peace on the throne of the kingdom of David and over his kingdom to establish it and uphold it with justice and righteousness."
Yep.
He gave that to us later. You had that.
It comes in later, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's not on this
It's not
list,
on the
yeah,
sheet,
exactly, which
yeah.
is one of the ones I'm thinking, there's plenty to find that aren't on this list, because they're later in this.
I was
right?
gonna say.
But what about that verse that said to you, I wanna talk about that verse. Is there something about that
About Jesus and his kingdom that is coming. I mean,
Okay.
he's born and through the line of David and right on through.
So leaving the intellectual component behind, what about that verse that you sat there and said, I wanna ring this up? What about it for you personally is exciting about that verse?
Who Jesus is. I mean, it was prophesied.
So it's the
thousands-
ruler, right? Him who you know and love being where he's meant to be.
Over the kingdom.
Okay.
For me, as he read that, that would be my verse.
Okay.
That would be my favorite because, yeah, it gives you peace. He's got it. He's the ultimate in finish. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got it.
Exactly
We don't
right.
have to worry. We don't have to do anything. He's
Right.
going to give us direction to
Mhm.
lead. We don't have to worry about leading.
Yep.
He's going to help us.
Fantastic. Good.
I like the one about the work.
Okay.
Isaiah 65:22.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, your work is going to be productive. You're not gonna have weeds to deal with anymore.
Yeah, right?
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
It's the Mr. Incredible, right? I just fixed the world. Why does it always need fixing again, right? It's always falling apart,
The
right?
second law of thermodynamics is no longer in play.
Oh, well, yeah, maybe.
There you
Exactly. Or it's overcome.
go. Yeah.
It's probably in play, but it's overcome, right? Somebody else was gonna say something? Chad?
For me, it's probably Isaiah 16:5. It was either that or the teaching the knowledge, but I don't know, I think I'll just appreciate God ruling rather than man.
Yeah, right? Yeah, so I think this is back to what Bob is talking about, and this idea to sit there and say that, again, we have somebody we can fully trust in charge of this thing, right? We are all confronted with a choice probably in November where we're gonna have to kind of hold our nose, close our eyes, and, pick a person, right? I mean, it's just like 365 million people, we get these two to choose. Something's wrong, right? We have a verse on that as well coming up. So,
All over the world.
I think it's going to be nice too to have all the people with the same
Mindset.
focus in life, and that we trust Jesus and We don't have to worry about unbelievers throwing boulders in our path and,
Yeah.
you know, getting in the way and messing stuff up. And, cause I think for me, I used to always assume everyone I met was Christian.
Yeah.
And that's how you reacted with them up front, and then you find out very quickly they're not.
Yeah.
They're in it for themselves, and that's it. And now it's sad that we have to assume that the people we meet at work or whatever are not Christian.
Yeah. And we used to have a time where we would think in terms of like any sort of a transaction was intended to be a win-win. And now everybody comes into most transactions thinking win-lose. If I didn't win, I lost, right? Things are very different than they used to be, right? So moving into day one, the Jeremiah quote. I hope you got the point of that right. They will come and they will sing for joy in the height of Zion. They will be radiant over the goodness of Yahweh, over the grain, the new wine, and the oil, over the young of the flock and the herd, and their souls will be like a watered garden. Is that a powerful image? In your life, do you have moments that you can go back to where you just sit there and say, I don't want this day, this moment to ever end? Don't make me confront everything outside of what's happening in this moment. We all have those, right? If you haven't, my apologies. Life has not worked out well, right? Because we all should have these moments at times. But what if that was your experience every day?
Every moment.
Every moment of every day.
Ooh.
Right? That's the kingdom in a nutshell. It's going to be amazing. So as we look at our verses and go through our workbook, let's talk a little bit about these things, right? Genesis 15, 26, and 28 essentially start off with this. It sits there and says, on that day Yahweh cut a covenant with Abraham, saying, to your seed I have given this land, from the river of Egypt as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. So seed will come back up in this section a little bit later on. But what are these, the triplicate idea of this? You know, first off, let me just start with the question that's on here, right? Two elements, people and place. What are the people? What is the place?
People are the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is built through the three
Exactly.
verses that you gave. And then the place is, initially it's the land of the Canaan, the land of the Canaanites and the Jebusites and all the other ites.
The
And
Edomites, Dynamites.
Exactly. and then it's just the land I will show you, and the land right where you are.
Okay.
You know.
Is that all it says though in that verse?
No, it's a bigger piece.
It's bigger than that.
Well, it's huge, yeah.
Much huger than that from that perspective, right? Because what is the river of Egypt?
The Nile.
The Nile. Exactly right. So that's
the
pretty,
Nile to the Euphrates.
that's pretty darn far east, right? And the Euphrates, pretty far darn, west.
Yeah.
Darn, I'm backwards. My orientation is not right, you know. So anyway, the Euphrates is pretty far north and east. The Nile, pretty far to the west, right? Now, again, let me ask you this question: has Israel ever controlled that much territory?
No.
What was the maximum extent of, say, David, Solomon's reign? Did it go that far?
No.
I mean, and did anybody control a greater pile of land than Solomon? No, absolutely not, right? So why do you think people were so excited to see Israel reconstituted after World War II?
I thought it would never happen, for one,
Why not?
because it just looked impossible. Like my dad said when it happened, it was such an eye-opener.
Yep. Because it just seemed like a miracle.
It did, it probably was a miracle.
It was a miracle, I would agree with that, but I mean, even to a non-believer, they would have to sort of sit there and say, that's the least expected outcome.
This is a 2,000-year-old, just that they were preserved as an ethnic group
Yeah.
for 2,000 years.
Exactly right. That's also amazing.
The original land though included Jordan. It was a big chunk of land and then it got cut back.
Yeah, that
Before
was.
they even.
Yeah, because who's
got
supposed
going.
to be in Jordan? Two tribes. Reuben is one, they're the biggest chunk of, and then Dan's the other, a little bit to the north, right? Now, why is this promise repeated 3 times? And who said it was the land? Oh, you sat there and said it's the land of who?
Well,
Abraham?
Isaac and Jacob,
Jacob.
yes.
Okay, great. So why the threefold repetition?
I would say because the promise was repeated to each of them.
Okay.
It was given to Abraham, it was re-given to Isaac, it was
Re-given
re-given
to
to Jacob,
Jacob,
and Jacob's name was changed
to Israel.
to Israel.
Exactly right.
Generational.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it also defines, like, we hear now with all the cultures that are surrounded, like in Jerusalem, you know, we're all sons of Abraham,
Uh-huh.
you know? And so this says, yeah, we didn't go with Ishmael, you know, we didn't go with Esau,
Exactly.
you know, we didn't, you know.
Yeah, that's exactly the point that I was hoping you would catch. Understand that other lands in the area come out of this line of people. Lot and his daughters create the Ammonites and Moabites, right? You got Ishmael and his group, Edomites, et cetera, right? We're in Dubai, and we're driving through on their massive highways, and there's this humongous new development. And I cannot remember the name. I meant to look up this morning, I forgot to. But it is Abraham. It is named after Abraham's second wife. Can't remember what it's called. Anyway,
Well, was
it's
her name like Keturah? Or something?
conceivably. I don't know. Sorry, I thought it had started with an A or something like this, right?
That was Moses.
So anyway, why would they claim this huge new development and put her name on it? They tie themselves back to who? Abraham, right? And so this is our land because of our father Abraham. But the land promise is given to who? I am the God of who? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? It's that qualifying aspect of it that's so important here. Is this land conditional? Is this land grant conditional or unconditional? It's what?
Unconditional.
You see any conditions when you read through these verses? Any conditions on that part? If it's unconditional, then is it eternal and irrevocable?
Yeah.
Yes.
I would have to say yes, right? Or God is a liar, which is the whole point of what Satan, I think, is going off and trying. So this is an example of somebody basically saying, okay, let's just draw some lines and take the borders as stated. That is a whopping huge chunk of space. Not as big as Texas, but it's pretty big. Just saying. But again, there's been no extent of Israel that looks anything like that, right? Pretty amazing. And again, if you're going to bring everybody back in Israel, the Old Testament saints, New Testament saints, this is the center of the world, you're going to need some space? Next one. Therefore God says, thus says the Lord Yahweh, I will gather you from the peoples and assemble you out of the countries, not counties, among which you have been scattered, and I will give you the land of Israel. So, let me ask you this question, right? God promises to restore Israel back to what? I'm going to restore you back to what? The land. The land, that picture that we just put up there, right? So, when is this promise given? Clearly when they are not in the land.
Babylon.
They're in Babylon in this case, right? Jeremiah and Ezekiel are these letters essentially before and after the captivity, right? So the question then is this, right? Haven't these been fulfilled? Weren't they fulfilled in the return from Babylon? It's an obvious answer, right?
Wasn't the whole land.
Temporary.
Right. So again, this is the idea, right? Jeremiah, if you remember when you read it, it says the term restoration refers to a restore or reversal of fortune. And again, their banishment from the land to return to the land. Yes, that's true. But again, the other part of it is, does Israel achieve its former glory when they come back from the captivity?
No.
Not even close, right? So yes, being in the land isn't enough. Right? Because of these promises, all these physical promises, and this idea of restoration to their former glory, that never happened. It still hasn't happened to this day. So we have this Isaiah and Matthew. And he will send forth his angels in a great trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other. Now, isn't this a promise to the church? Why not?
First of all, he's gathering from the four winds, which really has to do with the earth. It has nothing to do with the sky.
Okay.
It has everything to do with gathering the people on the face of the planet from the four directions to Israel.
Okay.
Is my opinion.
I'm going to read Isaiah 11, if I can find it quickly, which I won't be able to do. And let's start with this verse right there. Okay. In Isaiah 11, it sits there, it says verse 12, it goes off and says, he will lift up a banner for the nations, gather the dispersed of Israel, and he will collect the scattered of Judah from the four corners of the earth. What's the similarity in the language between these two? Matthew and Isaiah 11.
The directions.
Yeah, it's this idea of capturing the east and the west, the north and the south, right? The furthest extents that you can go. My people have been dispersed. I will find them and bring them all back.
Yeah. It's to the Jews.
It's to the Jews. And again, the promises of these prophets are going to be covered more in Unit 9. But again, we get Jeremiah 31:10, Deuteronomy 35:30, which we got through here at the beginning. These things are promises to the Jewish nation. So if we can get somebody to open up their Bible to Deuteronomy 30, let's look at verse 6 here, which again, moreover, Yahweh your God will circumcise your heart, the heart of your seed, to love Yahweh your God with all of your heart, with all your soul, that you may live, right? What has changed? What's the difference?
What's the change from what?
This is a kingdom verse, right? Something has to change. What is the change?
God circumcises their heart so that they can actually love him and serve him with their whole heart.
Okay, so tell me, what is the definition of the realm? The realm is what?
People in the place.
People and the place. People and the place. Place is easy. I can bring these people back physically. What's the problem? Problem is this. The people are the problem, right? And I always sat there and said, if you can't change your people, then just change your people, right? So firing all of you, we're creating a whole new class, right? So the idea is to say what's wrong with these people is that they have a heart issue, right? Now, we go further ahead into Matthew, and John and Matthew both start their ministry with one word. What is it?
Repent.
Repent. Change. Because what you think is right about you doesn't matter. Right? So if you aren't made new, are you going to be part of the realm? No. You won't be part of the kingdom. Right? So describe the realm for me. Who and where? The realm is? Simple terms?
Israel.
This is a summary of not this verse, but a summary of this section. The realm is? People in place. What's the land? What's the place?
Israel.
Israel. And the little Israel that we know and love?
No.
Big.
Big Israel we've never seen. The people, have we ever met these people?
Some of
Some
them.
of them.
Right? Okay. Why? Why have we met some of the people?
Some of them have had their
They
hearts
were just
changed.
Messianic
Been
Jews.
born
Because some
Yeah,
have
we've met some
proper heart.
Messianic Jews, right, who had their hearts changed, right? But
Remnant.
we are also going to be part of the kingdom because, again, the promises to the nations, right? We've met some of these people because we ourselves are people of changed hearts. Right?
So we wind up over there in this place.
Conceivably, although I'm going to have I'm hoping to get a little chunk of mule to roll or something like this in West Texas. So anyway. All right.
His new wife.
It can be beautiful. It can be beautiful. That's the point of it, right? So we're going to be given something cool to make. We're going to be given something to make a cool something out of. So anyway. So moving on then to the next section, which is now the ruler. Okay. Let's talk about this a little bit here. Genesis 49:10. And again, presuming Israel, Which tribe is the great king going to come out of? Judah, right? Which is should be a big surprise when you read the book of Genesis, but we'll cover that in our Genesis class later on this year, right? So what tribe was the first king from?
Benjamin.
Benjamin. If you're an Israelite, should you have said, huh?
Yeah.
Something ain't right
This is-
here,
yeah.
right?
That's the last one.
This is, and he's also the last one, right? Sort of, right? Now again, does the appointment of Saul work as far as Genesis 17:6 is concerned? Which is said to Abraham, I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings will go forth from you. Is that true? Does Saul meet that criteria?
Yeah.
Absolutely he does, right?
Does he?
Who else is a king that comes out of Abraham's line? Who's not over Israel or Judah?
Melchizedek.
No, Melchizedek is
Yeah,
completely
before.
separate. He's a priest. King priest.
Kings of Edom would be.
Kings of Edom, exactly right. So there is a whole pile of people that fall out of this thing, right? Which is again why it's important to sit there and say this is a person who has to fall out of what? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then more importantly, specifically out of Judah, right? Now, again, we get this later on, and this is your verse, Bob. Behold, days are coming, declares Yahweh, when I'll raise up for David a righteous branch. He will reign as king and prosper and do justice and righteousness in the land. Now we have a bit more something specific, right? The great king is whose son? David, right? The tribe of Judah has its first king in who? Who's the first king of Judah? David. Who's the last king of Judah? Jesus, right? So it's a nice symmetry to the bookends there, right? So we go on in Acts 2:36. Peter, therefore let all the house of Israel know for certain that God has made him both Lord and Christ, this Jesus whom you have crucified. You will recognize him by his scars, right? It isn't just Thomas who says, hey, I need to see the scars, because when we get to Revelation, John's up there and he says, when he had taken the scroll, the 4 living creatures, 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each having a harp and a golden bowl full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints, and they sang a new song, saying, worthy are you to take the scroll and open its seals, because you were slain and purchased for God with your blood people from every tribe and tongue, people and nation. You made them to be a kingdom and priests to our God, and they will reign upon their earth. Notice here in this verse in Revelation, land and ruler continue to go together. Again, his scars go with him into heaven and into the kingdom. And then finally, this one. These will wage war against the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are called and elect and faithful. And again, notice the description of the people. Again, the part of the realm, the people. What about the people is unique and different? They are what?
Chosen and faithful.
Chosen, elect, and faithful. Again, words not, yes, you can say chosen and elect for Israel. Faithful, it's a bit of a stretch, except for what? A remnant of people, right? But they will be faithful from this perspective. Romans 8:29-30, because those who he foreknew, he also predestined to become conformed to the image of his son, so he would be the firstborn among many brothers. And those who he predestined, he also called. Those he called, he justified. And those he justified, he glorified. So thinking about the ruler verses, describe this ruler for me and to me. And you can use any of the other scriptures that you want to do. Who is this ruler?
Jesus.
Jesus, right? This is the easiest question in the whole thing, right? It's God, Jesus, Bible, right? Jesus. No more with Jesus, right? Yes, it is. But describe him to me. That's his name. Describe him.
So he's of the tribe of David,
Of the tribe of David,
and he.
who's of the tribe of Judah.
Right, and then he, tribe
So
of David. Yeah.
clan is what you
Yeah.
meant, but yeah.
Yes, and then he bears the scars from the crucifixion.
Yeah.
And he becomes the king of kings.
Okay. Other descriptions of him. From any other scripture that you want to bring up.
Revelation 22:6, and he said to me, these words are trustworthy and true, and the Lord, the God of the spirits of the prophets. So that's one thing he is. Actually, that was the wrong verse, I admit. Never mind.
That's okay. It's an exciting verse. Exactly right. Exactly right.
He's the lamb.
He's the lamb, right? Interesting image, right? And again, John's job is to sit there and prepare people and then point to who? Jesus, and he calls him the lamb. Not a term from the Old Testament in that sense, right?
I love the scripture that you read. I mean, he alone is worthy to open the seals because of who he is.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what we look forward to. All this time, we need somebody to overcome.
Yeah.
And so we see that in him.
Exactly.
Explain that it's not from the Old Testament.
Oh, sacrificial lambs, paschal lambs are certainly there, right? But they never called the Messiah the lamb. He was never,
Oh,
they
no, he
never
was
saw
king.
him in terms of
Yeah,
a sacrifice.
He was king, yeah.
You're gonna make me dig now.
Huh?
You're gonna make me dig.
Yeah, go
You
for
don't
it.
think that's in the Old Testament?
I would point to Isaiah 53 to say, like, he was like a sheep led to the slaughter, like we have this idea of a lamb.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay? But again, a paschal lamb, right? That's where it becomes unique, right? He's a Passover lamb, right? It's one thing to sit there and say he's an animal prepared for sacrifice. They had lots of sacrificial animals. But John gives us this, he pulls it all together and gives us this new term, right? And so John himself then in heaven sits there and says what? And I look, and the lion from the tribe of Judah looks like what? A lamb
who's been
slain.
slain.
Yeah, exactly, right? John is the one who uniquely pulls these elements together. I just think it's fun, right?
Well, it's brought up in that Revelation 5 that,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
by his blood, he purchased men of every nation to be a kingdom.
There's two more elements I was hoping you guys would land on, because this goes back to what George did last week. This idea of mediatorial.
Yeah, yes.
Jesus is the King of Kings, but he is also what? Priest.
Yes.
Exactly right. And it's his blood that he does what? It's all Hebrews chapter 10, right? He stands before the God of the universe and pleads the merit of his blood. Right? He is also what? He is the
Prophet, priest, and king.
prophet, exactly right. And so he's told us what as a prophet.
And then he does something unheard of as priest. He sits at the right hand of God. The priest would never dare to sit in the Holy of Holies.
Exactly right. Exactly right. But as a prophet, go back to that mediatorial role. What has he prophesied? Come on, people.
Well, I mean, there's a lot there.
Pick one. I don't care.
He's returned. He's coming
Yes,
back.
I think that's where I was hoping that's where you're going with your Revelation thing, right? He's
Yes,
prophesying.
I was.
I'm coming back, right? Joe and I were talking about some of his illness, right? And if you're caught in some sort of a chronic illness, right, it is very hard to get out of the trajectory that life is just working its way down to its inevitable conclusion, right? And we can get caught in that same thing because we live in these times, these places, these circumstances, and we're like, it's never going to get better. And then Jesus says at the end, what? I'm coming.
Yeah, quickly.
Revelation.
No,
19.
we say come quickly. Yeah, but again, this is the point. He says, I'm coming. Right? That changes everything.
So Revelation 19, starting with verse 11. You're asking what does he look like? What are his characteristics? There it is. It says when he comes, says this rider, he is no longer the sacrificial, the Messiah ben Joseph. Right now he is Messiah ben David. He is the warrior king.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's going to set things right.
Absolutely. And with that, this is the point. Is this man worthy of worship?
Yes.
Absolutely. So this is an old video, but it is worth bringing in at this time. If you haven't seen it, enjoy it.
I wonder, do you know it?
Oh, yeah.
Is a sovereign king. No means of measure can define his limitless love. He's enduringly strong. He's entirely sincere. He's eternally steadfast. He's immortally graceful. He's imperially powerful. He's impartially merciful. Do you know him? He's the greatest phenomenon that has ever crossed the horizon of this world. He's God's Son. He's a sinner's Savior. He's the centerpiece of civilization. He's unparalleled. He's unprecedented. He is the loftiest idea in literature. He's the highest personality in philosophy. He's the fundamental doctrine of true theology. He's the only one qualified to be an all-sufficient Savior. I wonder if you know him today. He supplies strength for the weak. He's available for the tempted and the tried. He sympathizes and he saves. He strengthens and sustains. He guards and he guides. He heals the sick. He cleanses the lepers. He forgives sinners. He discharges debtors. He delivers the captives. He defends the feeble. He blesses the young. He serves the unfortunate. He regards the aged. He rewards the diligent. And he beautifies the meek. I wonder if you know him. He's the key to knowledge. He's the wellspring of wisdom. He's the doorway of deliverance. He's the pathway of peace. He's the roadway of righteousness. He's the highway of holiness. He's the gateway of glory. Do you know him? Well, his light is matchless. His goodness is limitless. His mercy is everlasting. His love never changes. His word is enough. His grace is sufficient. His reign is righteous. And his yoke is easy. And his burden is light. I wish I could describe it to you. He's incomprehensible. He's invincible. He's irresistible. You can't get him out of your mind. You can't get him off of your hand. You can't outlive him, and you can't live without him. The Pharisees couldn't stand him, but they found out they couldn't stop him. Pilate couldn't find any fault in him. Herod couldn't kill him. Death couldn't handle him, and the grave couldn't hold him. Yeah, that's my king.
Just powerful.
Yes,
isn't it?
that's totally awesome.
My favorite line, I wish I could describe it.
Oh, yeah.
Because again, this is what John says. If the sky were a scroll and every person a writer by trade, it's not going to think of the world. Right? That's the ruler of the kingdom. We don't see him that way today. Does he have the right to reign? In Daniel, I love this verse. This is my favorite Daniel verse. This edict is by the resolution of the watchers, and the decision is the command of the holy ones, in order that the living may know that the Most High is the powerful ruler over the kingdom of mankind, gives it to whomever he wishes, and sets over it the lowliest of men. Like crap. Everything's great until that adjective right there, right? What two kingdoms are referenced in this verse? Unit 2,
Kingdom of mankind.
Yes.
which is the mediatorial kingdom, and the universal kingdom. Exactly right, okay? So, again, every leader, Nebuchadnezzar gets this the first time. Nebuchadnezzar confesses this. He does it 3 times in this section of Daniel. Daniel chapter 4, 17, 25, and 32. Again, every leader needs to hear this. Every leader forgets this. Isn't this, according to how I set up this lesson, isn't this the very definition of divine right? It is, isn't it? From that perspective. We basically, these people claim that I can sort of claim I have a divine right to rule because why? I'm ruling. It's by definition, right? I can't be here if it wasn't for what? God, right? 2 Samuel 7:8. And again, just a portion of it. When your days are fulfilled, you lie down with your fathers. I will raise up one of your seed after you, who will come forth from your own body, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish his throne of his kingdom forever. This is known as what? The Davidic, right? Now here is in the Abrahamic covenant. Is this conditional or unconditional? Revocable or irrevocable? Irrevocable, right? There's no conditions on this. Because what does David have to do to make this thing happen?
Nothing.
Die?
Yeah.
That's the only action I see that David has to take here, right? Is to pass away, right? Now again, this is just taking the Abrahamic covenant, which is about what? Your seed. We've seen this now 4 times in this unit, in this lesson. Your idea of your seed, right? And he sits there and says, what? I'm going to take that seed that we saw back all the way in Genesis chapter 3, and we're going to go off and do what? We're going to add some greater detail to it. And Psalm 89 summarizes an important promise. Again, the whole psalm is worth reading, but 35 through 37 says, once I have sworn by my holiness, I will not lie to David. His seed shall endure forever, and his throne as the sun before me. It shall be established forever like the moon. The witness in the sky is faithful. Again, we'll look more on this in Unit 8. Daniel 7, Acts, and Revelation. So we get this from Daniel. I kept looking in the night visions. Behold, but the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming, and he came to the Ancient of Days, came near before him, and to him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and men of every tongue might serve him. What elements tied these 3 verses together? Did you see it? What?
Reigning, like he's gonna reign.
Clearly there's an element of reigning, exactly right. So let's start with that. Is this throne that he's reigning from, is this throne in heaven or on earth?
Has to be on earth.
Comes before
Clouds of heaven.
Comes with the clouds of heaven and approached the Ancient of Days.
Yeah.
So it sounds like he's in heaven.
This is him, this is the universal kingdom, this is the throne in heaven, right?
Yeah.
So it's not David's. So, thinking of that, yes, reigning is all part of it, but what other element is in all of these verses?
Yeah, he's in control. He's the one in charge. He is the ruler. He is the one deserving.
It's something more obvious than that.
He's given the authority.
He's given the authority,
Yeah,
exactly
God
right.
gives Jesus the authority.
That's exactly right. He has given the authority, which is the point of this whole thing. He is given the right to reign, okay? But there's another element to this, which I think sometimes we miss, right? Acts chapter 1, verse 9, after he said this, he was taken up as they were watching, and a cloud took him out of their sight. Every one of these, how do we see the Son of Man? In clouds, right? It's a key that links these verses together. Why else would he sit there and say he goes up in the clouds? He's going to return in the clouds. All of this stuff has to do what? He's basically saying what? I'm claiming this here. And this is my right to rule because why? And again, it doesn't say anything about what he has to do to come before the Ancient of Days, but we learn that because of who he is as the ruler. He is this lamb slain, right? He has the right to come and end history by opening the scroll that he sees in the hands of the Father on his throne, right? The mediatorial kingdom flows out of the universal kingdom, just as Nebuchadnezzar learned. And again, as Nebuchadnezzar was given the right to rule, so is Jesus given the right to rule. So, where does the authority come from in this case? We asked you to go off and do a couple of things here, right? Jesus came up and spoke to them and said, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. And then in Revelation 17:12, we had to go off and take a look at the 2 words for authority and kingdom. How did you guys wrestle with that? Because the same word for authority is used of the beast. Anybody bother? I know you guys did, so I'm not picking on you two. But everybody else in class? Anybody bother to take a look at those words? What did you discover?
Well, there's a difference in one kingdom and the other.
Definitely a difference in one kingdom and the other, right? In what way? Where are the 2 kingdoms that we're talking about?
The place is different.
Okay.
The people are different.
The place and people are different.
The
That's
reign is different.
good. Keep going. Where does the authority come from?
The right is not there for the earthly kingdom that's against God.
Again, exactly right. That authority was given to who?
Adam.
Adam, because it was given to man, who then did what?
blew it.
He gave it over.
Got a
to-
big mortgage.
Yeah, exactly. Gave it over to somebody else, right?
In fact, that scroll that we talk about, that's how they would do a deed. If you had borrowed money, the terms of the loan are on the outside of the scroll, and the inside of the scroll is the deed. So Christ was able to open that up because he had paid the price, and now he's taking title back to this.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Well said. So again, the authority of the beast does not come from God. The authority of the beast comes from man. Does that authority last? It doesn't stand, right? If the authority doesn't come from God, it doesn't stand, right? Now Jesus sits there and says, this is in Matthew 28. This is at the end, right? From Matthew's perspective, the book is basically done. It says, all authority in the kingdom has been given to me. It doesn't say that, right? It's not missing that. It sits there and says, all authority has been given to me, right? Can a kingdom operate without authority? But can you have authority without a kingdom? Yes. That's the right to reign. Okay? The right is what he's earned on his time on earth. Okay? But it hasn't been fulfilled, and it's coming, right? So this is what I wanted you to think through with this at this level, right? So, on to the last portion of it, which is the actual rule. So we have this. He asked of me, and I will surely give you the nations as your inheritance. The ends of the earth is your possession. You will break them with a rod of iron, and you shall shatter them like a potter's vessel. Well, when the king is presented on the earth reigning, is there any specificity to the human condition at that time?
What?
I'm asking the question, right?
Ask it again.
While the king is on the earth, reigning and ruling, are we given much specificity as to the human condition at that time?
It's not perfect because there's rebellion.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
That's where I'm going with it, exactly right. I think a lot of times when we read through the spiritual elements of the millennial kingdom, we see what? We're a people made new. The problem is, not all of us are made new.
Yeah.
Okay? There's a reason he has to. What happened to the shepherd's crook?
Yeah.
He's carrying what? This is the new version of the kingdom version of Clue. It was Jesus with the iron scepter in the throne room, right? That's where he murdered those people, right? It's a very different vision, isn't it? Why do you need this implement to rule?
Because children are going to be born. They'll enter the kingdom by birth.
By birth.
But not being changed.
Exactly.
The people that enter are all changed, and the church is already resurrected. So we're here.
All the saints that come into it, either from the church age or the Old Testament period, right? The martyrs of the tribulation period, everybody coming in from that perspective made new, right? Mm-hmm. The sheep and the goats separated, right? The sheep that come in, are they made new?
Yes. The sheep.
They already are.
Some
How
people,
they get in.
They better.
No, not necessarily. I demonstrated my love for Jesus by what I did.
But it's a judgment of the nations.
It's a judgment of the nations,
Some
exactly
are gonna come
right.
in that.
Some are going to come in, and I'm not necessarily thinking that, oh, by the way, boom, you're just made new. He doesn't necessarily say I'm glorifying you.
Yes.
Right? But to the reproductive productivity, right? There's going to be new little people running around, and are those new little people born perfect? Not a chance. And at 1,000 years, what is the end of the story? You get it in one whole verse. They rebel. How many people? If you can count the sand, whatever it is, the grains of sand on the seashore, then you have some idea of how many people are rebelling. That's craziness, right?
So maybe there will be pediatricians in the
Sorry about that.
And if you're back in...
And you're making a case for some of those people who came in, they have children who age and require geriatric care.
That's right. Exactly right. Isaiah 16, the extortioner has come to an end, destruction has ceased, oppressors have completely disappeared from the land, and the throne will be established in loving kindness. A judge will sit on it in truth in the tent of David. Moreover, he will seek justice and be prompt in righteousness.
Yeah.
What happens when justice is delayed? What's the phrase that we hear? Justice denied, right?
Yeah.
Justice is delayed, justice is denied, right? What's the opposite of that? What if every time you step out of line, you get whacked?
Yeah, as I say, justice is served.
Justice is served every time you step out of line. How would it feel like to run through life wearing a shock collar all the time? Do you see why people at the end want to rebel? If your heart is hard, and you've lived under that reign for 1,000 years, what are you thinking?
Insurrection.
Yeah.
Insurrection. Let's go, buddy. I'm down for it. Because what is our basic problem?
So,
We're still, without a new heart, we'll just constantly recreate. We're now living in a garden that's over the whole planet. Everything is going along swimmingly well, and yet numerous people want to do what? Throw the whole thing off. Because our hearts are bad. It's
they haven't
amazing.
been born again.
Because they have to be born again, exactly right.
I think it's interesting that Cain just personally talked to God right before he went and killed his brother.
Yeah, right? Clever, right? Very, very, it's just such a clever combination of circumstances.
It's so weird because, I've always said, it really bothers me, they had Jesus in their midst.
Yeah.
And they still didn't believe, and I think, if we had Jesus in our midst, we would believe, but yet, there's this whole millennial kingdom that there is Jesus right there in the midst of it, and they still do not believe.
They won't, that's exactly right.
What's
Like the Garden of
amazing
Eden.
is everything that could go, that's right, they're living it. They're
Yeah.
not living in our world where things are all screwed up.
Yeah.
That's right.
They're living in, and they still rebel.
That's exactly right. It is perfect,
It
right?
just blows my mind.
At the end here, Psalm 110, the Lord is at your right hand. He will crush kings in the days of his anger. He will render justice among the nations. He will fill them with corpses. He will crush the head that is over the wide earth. How does this establish the peace that the other scriptures imply in the kingdom? Isaiah 4:11 says, with righteousness he will judge the poor, decide uprightness for the afflicted of the earth, and he will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. With the breath of his lips he will put the wicked to death. How does that establish peace?
All evil people are dead.
Yes, exactly right. Step too far out of line, and what happens to you? This is why it says a man who doesn't make it past 100 is going to be considered what? Cursed. You are so reprobate. No matter how much discipline we instituted on you, that's the final discipline. Thank you for playing, taking your piece off the board. That's the reign, okay? Now on our side, we're doing what? Yes, it's about time, right? It's been ridiculous seeing. It's back to the minor prophets, which we'll cover later, right? Where he sit there and say, Lord, how long? And finally, when it actually occurs, people on the other side will be going, how long? Right? Are we not done with this yet? Because I can't live in this world. It's craziness. So Unit 4 next week, which we'll hand out here,